Welcome to Movie and a Beer, everybody. This is Dan bringing us in. We have a really cool episode for you here.
How do you know it's really cool? We haven't done it yet.
It's really cool because it's aligning with a couple of things that are kind of important. And we'll get to those here in a minute. But who's at the table tonight?
Well, good evening. Thank you for joining us, dear listener. This is Aaron. I'm your peach expert. Peaches. You might say there's millions of peaches.
Peaches for free?
I was going to leave it hanging in the silence there, co-host. But who are you, co-host? Go ahead.
I'm your co-host, Blake. I'm your crying expert. Did you know there's no crying in baseball?
What?
Weird, yeah.
Weird rule, man.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That is really weird.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, this is Brian. I'm your dirt in the skirt expert.
Dirt in the skirt.
And I have to mark this explicit. The first explicit episode.
We're all really laughing. So the gist of this film that we watched called A League of Their Own.
Indeed.
1992 classic.
1992 classic.
Mm-hmm.
It has Gina Davis and Tom Hanks just nailing it.
And Madonna. And Rosie O'Donnell.
And Lori Petty holding her own pretty well, despite being a newer actress.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole bunch of a cadre, as you would, of amazing actors and actresses.
Coven, maybe?
I don't know about a coven.
A murder.
There was a lot of really good acting going on the screen and a whole lot of montages. If you haven't seen this film before, it was done by Penny Marshall.
Mm-hmm.
If you know
who's a
who
huge
that
baseball fan, apparently.
Her and her husband, both
so cool.
They do a lot of
very
films.
Accomplished director.
Yeah, very amazing director. And she was in Laverne and Shirley, and there was a callback to one of the people who was in this. So there's a Squiggy that showed up as one of the announcers, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. Anyway, I'm digressing. So A League of Their Own came out.
Guys, focus says
it is a film about how the women's baseball leagues,
All-American League,
started back during World War II because all the men were on deployment and overseas, and they needed baseball.
Out there punching Hitler in the face.
Yeah,
1943 through 1954.
Got to keep morale up.
Got to keep them going
on the home front.
And for the Harvey Bar Company, you got to make money.
Yeah,
right.
So it basically started in the Midwest, and it was the Walter Harvey Candy Company, played by Gary Marshall, basically decided, hey, let's have these recruiters go out and find women who can actually play baseball or have at least a pretty face, because that they literally talk about that. It's like, we're going to be misogynistic and sexist about it, but we don't care.
We're going to be from 1943.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And the women who do sign up and go in,
they got skills, man.
They got the skills. They're actually really good players. They had some tryouts.
They may not have the looks they always want. They may not be able to read, as one character was unable to do, but they've all got what it takes, or minus the number that got sent home. We never meet. But they got the skills to get to the World Series.
So this is based off of an actual true story series of events. These characters are portraying actual people who did these things, supposedly.
Yeah, I mean, Dottie is an actual person.
Yeah.
They base the character, Gina Davis's character Dottie, on
an actual baseball
person
player
named Dottie. Yeah,
based on true events.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in sort of honor of embracing womanhood and their ability to do amazing things,
4 men are going to talk about it.
Us 4 guys are going to mention
female power,
things. Female empowerment. This episode is going to be coming out around the same time that She Brew is happening here in Portland.
Dan, what is She Brew?
Beer. So She Brew is a women or female identified celebration of brewing. Professional brewers competition, as well as amateur or homebrewer competition, occurs. It's usually the first weekend in February. They do HRC, which is the Human Rights Campaign, is one of the co-sponsors of Oregon Brew Crew, where Homebrew Club are the ones that put on the competition and also help organize and put it on. There's a big festival. You can try the beers. So anyone who's female identified professional brewer submits their beers. It gets judged. Someone gets picked, and they provide all these beers at the competition. So it's like a beer festival, but you can taste all the beers that get submitted.
Well, there's cider as well.
The
She Brew website says it's beer and cider.
Yes.
The brewer for TPK Brewing, I think, usually submits every year.
Yeah. So in honor of that, I went over to Grand Fir Brewing and Steeplejack Brewing.
Have we had Grand Fir and Steeplejack on the podcast before?
We've Steeplejack, yes,
Mhm.
but Granford, no. Granford's
Hey,
kind
new
of off the
one.
radar. And when we get time later in the podcast to discuss about beers, I'm going to give a little rundown on the two professional brewers that are representing. And I did ask when I went to go actually pick up these beers in person what they were going to be submitting to Shebrew. And the people that were there were like, hey, we're going to do this and this and this. So, yeah, Anna Buxton with Steeplejack and Whitney Burnside with Granford will be chatting about them and their a little bit backstory and stuff. And
So
later on.
Shebrew has, I believe, an annual event.
Yeah, it's every year.
That I think is in early March. So, dear listener, if you are interested in beer festivals and if the West Coast is accessible to you, you may want to check that out. I believe March 8th is what I had read.
Yeah.
When it starts this year.
Where in Portland do they hold this event?
It changes year to year. I know the
This
judging.
year, where's it going to be?
Brian, you asked too many questions.
I know.
We'll put it
yes.
on the social media. You'll get see
We'll,
it there.
we'll put it on
You'll
the
see it
social.
after the
We
podcast.
could have a link to the Shebrew organization.
Dan's gonna
site.
just
March 8th,
The
2025.
festival is, yes, March 8th,
Different
2025
ringtone.
at the Left Bank Annex. So if you know,
We're professionals.
so the Left Bank,
Question of what?
the Left Bank Annex is
Sorry.
over by the Rose Quarter.
Ooh,
Yeah,
fun.
it's right there at the on and off ramps to I-5, right at the
I feel like you and I have been there before. I think.
Upright Brewing is down in that
That's
area.
it.
They're
Yeah.
they're in the
Hey,
building.
everyone, you have a map in your phone.
Look it up. Yeah, Left
I use
Bank
my phone
Annex.
for videos and nothing else.
Yeah,
I mean, photos of cats.
Photos
We all
Photos
have
of dogs, Aaron.
Actually, you know, I'm a dog person too. Like, maybe this is why we're friends.
I'm a person. I'm a human.
Oh, maybe not.
I don't hang out with werewolves, man. I'm sorry.
All right. So back to the movie, A League of Their Own. It's a movie.
Gina Davis is a werewolf. What? No, it's a. I love this movie. I didn't really see it. I watched it once when I was in like high school, maybe, and then again last year. And it's just a delightful little movie. It holds up. Little sounds belittling.
it's 2 hours long.
It's a 2 hours long
It's a
movie.
2 hour long movie.
It's a delightful, lengthy, girthy movie.
So we
Goodness.
we
Like a
were
baseball bat.
thinking about the male leads. There's really only 3 male characters, and then a couple of side characters, like the guy who owns the league or founded it, and then there's the guy, the announcer is shown 3 or 4 times, but there's really only John Lovitz at the beginning, who's trying to recruit people, and then
And
there's
his part got cut down. They just saved the meaner, jokier parts because they found the audience loved that and thought, we'll just let me be the comic relief here.
he's playing like a New Yorker out there,
Mhm.
and these poor women have no idea like why he has this attitude. and
These
stuff.
poor
It's
Oregon women
Oregon.
working on a dairy farm.
Yeah.
I don't think we even need to really discuss the men because they are kind of
They're secondary characters.
secondary characters.
Yeah.
And the whole point of this movie is female empowerment.
Yep.
And-
Though Tom Hanks does go
telling a
through-
story we wouldn't know.
Tom Hanks does go through. Well, his character goes through a bit of a journey,
A good character arc,
But-
for
but,
sure.
but all the ladies get like full stories and like we get to
Right,
see
yeah.
them.
A little
living
bit of
life
background
and-
on some of them too, which is really
Mhm,
amazing. I really appreciate the fact that there was a nod to there was a Negro League that also was
Mhm,
happening, not too terribly distant from that.
but kind of for
And-
the same reasons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
A lot of the major ball players were either actively enlisted or in morale boosting brigades,
yeah.
divisions, whatever.
Like the USO
PR.
shows.
yeah, US,
Right, right.
yeah, PR, and they were otherwise occupied. They couldn't play
Mhm,
baseball.
mhm.
Right.
But baseball was an American sport, and so they had to find ways of providing that entertainment for the home front because
Yep.
they were, rationing food and working in factories when they weren't used to it, and
Rosie
and
the Riveter.
scrap metal drives, etc.
Right. Right. So I'm just going to say, just to be clear, I don't enjoy baseball. I think it's like 4 minutes of action packed into 9 innings that can last us several hours. But I did like this movie. And for me, I think it's more about like those character journeys. You know, we care about Dottie, we care about Kit, we care about like what's happening to them. And like, the baseball is just sort of this backdrop. So I kind of wonder, how much of this is baseball and Americana? Because I think that is part of the movie. And I think it doesn't work if you decide you're going to try and make this like a hockey story or a soccer story instead. I think it has to kind of be baseball in that time and place. Because some of the drama and some of the tension comes from the uncertainty of the future of what happens when the war ends.
Yeah.
And
They bring that up a lot.
Yeah.
And then there's do you get the dreaded
The letter.
the letter or the
telegram from the War Department.
from the War Department, which does happen.
I
and
keep
that's
forgetting
represented.
I keep forgetting that happens, and I watch like, oh man, that's a
Yeah,
bummer.
and that's a really poignant scene. There, one of the baseball players gets a telegram saying her spouse was killed in action, and it certainly touched me. And I think that's pretty universal.
Yeah, agreed. And part of I think what makes that scene work is the telegram delivery person is maybe like the most emotionally unintelligent, emotionally illiterate person.
He's mumbling out loud about where's that name? Oh dang it! And they're all watching, waiting with being even Tom Hanks, who's been a joke character this whole movie, is now like putting on the acting and being a human.
And that's one of the turning points for that character, for Tom Hanks, as well as all of the women in the team, because they're like, it's real. I'm like, it's really happening. There's no pretending anymore.
Right. The only way we can help our friends and our spouses and our family members over there is to keep this up and keep up the morale on the home front.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing to help win the war.
But the kind of like that moment that the team had, I think, sort of solidifies a lot of the the connection.
Right. They are a family now.
Yeah,
absolutely.
because
they're all feeling that loss.
Right, because they none of them knew who it was. While that telegram guy was fumbling about how difficult his job was and what a bad day he's having.
And their leader, their coach, who is supposed to be leading them, finally kind of steps up. I think he'd been coaching more up to that point, but this really, like you said, solidified. They're all like still like a team, but fighting each other, butting heads, like with their family. Well, like you fight with your family.
But also too, the coach, as played by Tom Hanks, I think it was Jimmy Durant. Was it Jimmy Durant?
Jimmy Dugan.
Thank you. Jimmy Durant was a musician, but Jimmy Dugan. I think there was a lot of kind of just marginalization and sidelining, and a lot of what's the emotional experience and the expertise that these women have and that they're bringing. What matters about their stories. And who's listening and paying attention. Like that really came through for me in the film, that like even the agent recruiting them was kind of a dick.
Jerk. He was a total jerk to everybody.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, $75 a week. Yeah, that's more money than you're making now. Congratulations on figuring that out.
Yeah.
Like just
Hey, we definitely know that Madonna can actually dance.
She is an excellent dancer.
He could dance. So one of the
scene.
pieces of trivia that I saw, if you do go to IMDb and look up the film, you'll find a bunch of really interesting trivia, including the little bit that most of the stunts and scenes where there's action like that, there's not a double. It's actually most of the actors and actresses doing all of that themselves. Gina Davis had a stand-in for some of the scenes, but mostly it was them performing, and this was at like Madonna's hot, kind of apex of her career in the early 90s.
92 was 90s were a huge time for Madonna, and this is was this her first movie?
Material Girl, I think had already
there were a
come
couple
out,
of other movies that she was
like
in.
a virgin. I think
So dear listener, if you don't remember,
Madonna was a musician.
No, there's a scene at a juke joint where there's a lot of swing dancing going on, and Madonna just does all kinds of aerials and amazing moves.
And she talks about it a little bit later on that's actually what her job was. She used to get paid to dance, and she even says like, "Hey, you're going to close the team down. We're going to close down, and I'm going to go back to making 50 cents a day to let gin-soaked, sweat on me." And she was really broken on that. She's like, so to have the empowerment, and I thought it was really interesting that, so this was obviously sort of a roadhouse situation where they went dancing and the band was playing, and then it's like, obviously you have the one drunk woman that's up there who's trying to sing, and she sings to the guy that she's kind of interested in.
That.
And he's like, and you're like, okay, so there's someone for everyone. And they really kind of hammer that home in that scene. And I appreciate that, because there's a lot of films, Hollywood shit, that doesn't really allow that.
They focus on the leads getting their special someone, and then just push everyone else off to
everyone
the side.
else can just go pound sand.
Yeah. And they even show the wedding scene, right? Like they got married like during the season, and now they're
Martha, and then we don't
Nelson.
Nelson? Okay,
Nelson,
thank you.
yeah. I got a letter from Nelson.
I appreciated that scene, and a lot of the bus scenes really showed how every ball player was their own person. Rosie O'Donnell's character, they came off a little like caricatures, but she has like some nice moments of like, I'm realizing, well, I'm better than this guy. I know my self-worth. Nay gets a lot of scenes of like winking at people and being real flirtatious. Martha kind of finds her own singing to Nelson. Dottie is like the team mom coming in to tell everyone, hey, our owner's coming back. If we're caught here, we're done. Like, you've got to get back.
Right.
And I think it shows that back then, a lot of the male perspective on what the women are and what they're doing is they're not smart enough to do that. Like,
They were hooting and hollering in the first couple games.
Yeah. And I think it really does show that, empowerment, given those opportunities, and they'll shine. And they really, really do in this movie. So again, if you haven't seen this or heard about it, I really highly recommend anyone who's into sports, any young kids who are into sports, it doesn't matter who they are, show this to them and they'll understand it's like, it's about the team, it's about each other. It's not necessarily always about winning because...
Yeah, but I wouldn't say this is a sports movie.
It's not
either.
I mean,
look, there's at least one or two people at the table who aren't big sports fans.
Hey, no, I just don't like baseball. Soccer's great. But
soccer's good.
There's someone else at the
football?
table who doesn't watch a lot of sports.
Who's that, Brian?
I don't know. There's two people at the
I
table.
devour
that don't.
sports all day long. I'm Mr. ESPN, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
All right. So go ahead, Brian.
So the film is enjoyable just for it's a great drama, great character piece. If you're a little interested in kind of the history of women empowerment, this is kind of the same story as Rosie the Riveter, but kind of told differently in a different arena.
Yeah. And the actual like baseball Hall of Fame does have an actual like the women's league and
Wing
stuff. And
to
like this
this,
stuff.
yeah.
So if you're, at the places across America that do have that history and can see and understand, I would highly recommend it because it's really amazing to see what people can do and they put their minds to it and they start exercising that freedom to be able to go out and like, I can do this. And they do. And they're really good at it.
Well, so the Women's World Cup was not that long ago, and I think they had the highest ratings in the United States.
I remember that. Yeah.
And I'll say, like, not long before that, there were the Euro Championships, also soccer. This is just what I know. I'm not trying to be preferential.
Here's why
but
we watch Bend It Like Beckham.
I am,
which
and
is
I
a blast.
love that movie. I was so
It's a great movie. Go back and listen, dear listener.
But the level of play was incredible, and I think there's been more momentum and more of an audience for female leagues, which is great. We've got a couple of teams here in Portland that
The Thorns. There's rumblings of a women's basketball team, I think.
Yeah.
Possibly coming to Portland. which I'm pretty excited.
WNBA team is
pretty
supposed
excited
to
about that.
kick off this year or next year. There's always room to grow. There's always room, at least in the world of sports, for more people to participate and show what they can do. And this is a great film that demonstrates that. I really think that it's important that young people have an opportunity to see films like this that has like this is like a PG film. This is almost G-rated. I mean, it is. There is literally no foul language.
there's some
show
foul
nothing.
language.
They show Hanks drinking once from a flask, and that's
Yeah.
really the only drinking they show.
And-
There's
and
tobacco
There's
use.
some
And
tobacco
the bar.
use.
The bar, they
Yeah.
have beers.
Yeah.
A lot of the women players smoke, and they're not supposed to, but they do
right.
behind the back of their person who
Well, there's a war
the
on,
house
Dan.
mother.
There's a war on. You got to de-stress.
You do, and maybe that's what they did to do that. I don't know. I don't smoke, so I don't have an understanding of that need. But hey, whatever habits you have.
I don't either. My body's a temple, he said with a frozen pizza in his hand.
Filmmaking standpoint, I wanted to ask about a lot of outdoor shots on the bus, which didn't necessarily look like a soundstage. I mean, it looked like they were shooting on a bus, now just faking the movement, but there were outside shots of buses going by and then inside shots. Do you think those were actually a studio?
It felt pretty
No,
natural.
I think probably that was some kind of rig on the outside of the bus. Maybe. So generally, when you see people driving, the cars or the buses are being towed.
Yeah, they're on a platform
Because-
or a trailer, and they're just being
Because
towed.
the driver shouldn't be driving with the distraction of a whole bunch of
Filmmaking.
crew all around them.
Driving and acting at the same
Yeah,
time.
so probably the
Bad
bus
idea.
was being towed on a loop somewhere in wherever they shot it.
Yeah.
It
And
looked like the country.
a lot of those scenes looked really the same over and over. And
Yeah,
over.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of flat, empty space out there,
Hey,
boys.
hey, no, just I know I said I was a peach expert, but as a Rockford, Illinois expert, I'll also tell you there's lots of cornfields, lots of like soy more recently, but there were farms endlessly through
There
that
was a
whole
lot.
So
Yeah.
these farms are all distinct and very special, unique places.
to those farmers, but not to everyone else.
Hey, Dan, turn up the my eye roll sound effects.
So filmmaking.
Yeah.
Let's focus on that for just a second.
There were a few night shots, but primarily day shots.
Yeah, there was no computer generated. There was no special optical effects. I would say everything was very accomplished, but it wasn't great. It wasn't like stand out. But I personally like that. If I start paying attention to all the camera tricks or the camera blocking,
There's a problem.
Then I'm not paying attention to the story.
A sign you're not enjoying it.
Yeah. So I would say the only thing really of note was there is a lot of montage where they move us through training and games and the league getting more popular. They montage an awful lot.
I was going to ask about this. I was going to say, aside from filmmaking, there's the storytelling aspect of it. And Dan, I think you were complaining about the length and number of montages that were used in this film.
Both video, like moving montages, as well as still shots on a newsprint or a photograph, zooming in or out slowly.
Right.
I'm like, that's like basic filmmaking right there. So
I would say this movie is like maybe 10% montage. Like it's a lot. Like there's
10?
Yeah, more than usual.
More than usual.
Well, it's 20 minutes. I mean, it's a 2-hour film, so 10% is 20 minutes. I mean, it's a lot of montage.
That's not how minutes and hours work.
I know.
It'd be 12
I thought your
minutes.
percentage would be higher.
Well, maybe 15%, but there was a lot. I'm wondering what other movies we have out there that have as many montages as part of the storytelling technique. And
Maybe
if they do
war
it as
films?
well,
War films, maybe?
Like-
Yeah, I don't know.
like
When
Saving
they-
Private Ryan, where Tom Hanks quits his
Possibly.
job in the league and then goes to the beaches of Normandy.
He screams, "There's no crying in Normandy."
Maybe war films. There might be a few.
I mean, I'm just trying to think of just the genre that would use them the most. Comedies, especially like 80s comedies, where like we gotta clean up the frat house before the dean gets here, and it's like a cleaning montage.
I was thinking like
we gotta
Weird
save the
Science,
day.
like Weird Science, where
Yeah,
there's a lot of non-dialogue,
but not
scenes.
nearly as much.
No,
I mean,
no.
that's just like 30 seconds to get from mess to clean.
Yeah, I think they did that to make sure they showed the entire journey of the league,
Right.
because otherwise it's
Too much information.
otherwise we're getting just two people's stories, and then we know all about Dottie and Kit. But what about Doris and May and Martha and Miss Wisconsin?
Miss Georgia.
Miss Georgia.
Miss Georgia.
Like all those characters. I think they montage to get as much information in as possible while still giving us character development and seeing where these.
And that
really
also
go.
gives us the feeling of what is a team, because baseball is a team sport.
Right. Yeah.
So we need to develop all the characters on the team for it to be a meaningful team.
Yeah. So as far as audio, good sound effects, ball cracks, catching,
Chickens
balls
clucking,
things,
a cow moving twice.
some cow mooing,
Yeah.
and
Enthusiastic
farm
moves.
scenes.
Apparently, piece
lots
of trivia.
cheering.
During one of John Lovitz's scenes, he was so focused on doing the scene, he didn't notice a cow giving birth off camera.
Wow.
I forget what the rest of the trivia was, but that just happened, apparently.
When you're on a farm, you're on a farm. Man.
You got a job to do. You're going to act.
With all these wild animals.
With all these wild animals.
Where are the leashes?
There was that one
says it,
scene
that's
where
what it
there
is.
was a cow mooing in the background, and he eventually kind of broke character and talked to the cow.
Which I guarantee.
shut up or stop mooing already or
Right,
something
yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
Like, I'm not sure how he is now, but John Lovitz, at least at one point, was a very funny man who knew how to hit comedic timing.
And ham it up.
Big ham.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about the lighting, since it looked all natural. Do you think, Brian, and anyone else wants to chip in, is that to evoke the feeling of baseball? Because baseball is always, if you go to see it live,
It's outdoor.
It's outdoor. It's sunny. It's during the time of year where it's pretty warm. It's just there's a smell of grass. It's a really nostalgic feeling to it. Like, I love going to see a live baseball game, and I wonder if all this natural light is to help recreate that. in this film.
Probably. I mean, most of the games were afternoon games. They weren't evening. None of them were
It
evening
looked like it
games.
smelled dusty.
It did.
Yeah.
And they had, and we mentioned this numerous times, like, oh, they got dust on there. They got all dirty faces.
Aaron could not let go of the dirt. Aaron likes to clean baseball.
Hygiene is so important. And
If you're
their
playing ball right,
faces-
you're getting covered in dirt, bud.
There were a lot of faces that looked intentionally smudged.
That was a little.
I will say where it fell down was the makeup department.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
it felt
overdid it.
forced a little bit, especially like when Kit and
Dottie
were playing at the very first game that the John Lovett's character came and saw them. The scout came and saw them play. I mean, they were just head to toe.
I'm guessing
dirt
that was
covered.
the set of contrast between how clean and tidy he was and how they're really in it for love of the game, maybe.
And then later on, when they did play in actual stadiums, it wasn't as dirty either. I mean, there was a little bit, but not as much.
They had beautiful grass fields there.
They did.
Yeah, they're playing they're playing in Oregon dirt sticks.
Yeah, extra dirty and
Nutritious dirt. That's why we grow so much agriculture here.
It's true.
I want to ask. So
We're in Oregon.
this is not a sports movie,
No,
but
not at
it's
all.
also a sports movie.
I would
So-
say sports movie. It's a baseball movie.
Can we compare and contrast to other like sports movies that might be not mostly about sports? Like,
Let me tell you boys
like-
about basketball. No.
No, I was gonna say like Air Bud or Rudy or the Mighty Ducks. Like where would you place this?
I would say another baseball movie that's not really a baseball movie is Moneyball.
Moneyball. Oh yeah.
It's
True,
really
that's
a movie
about
about statistics.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
It's
yeah.
not
a good point.
and the business behind baseball.
Right.
Well,
But
what about-
revolutionizing how you pick your guys.
What about Field of Dreams? I mean, it's like
Is that
build
about coming
it, build it,
together as
and
a
they
community?
will build it, and they will come.
I haven't watched
It's
it in a
about
while.
ghosts.
It's about construction.
It's about ghosts.
ghosts in a cornfield.
Dan, that's Ghostbusters too.
Sorry.
Is Ghostbusters 2 a sports movie?
Yeah, if you count the Statue of Liberty walking around as a sport, yeah.
Dan, cut that out. Is Die Hard a sports movie?
Die Hard, he murders Germans. That's kind of a sport. Or
That's a
Swedes.
sport. There was more Swedes than
there's
Germans.
there's
thought they were
shooting in
Russians.
the Olympics.
Hey,
Yeah,
there's- there is Swedes in this. They sung
feel
a
like-
song, and in the song they say there's Canadians. We're all Americans,
And
but there's
Irish.
Canadians
And
Irish, and Swedes.
Hey,
I feel like I'm getting us off track.
Aaron, hit me
Yes.
with another one. I'll justify any movie you get me with.
Is
this.
Purple Rain a sports movie?
Purple Rain is the sport of love and song.
Playing guitar, the sport of playing guitar and bass really, really well, and band jam
In Apollonia.
band jam offs, because Purple Rain has two bands performing against each other in Minneapolis. You know this too because you're from
Aaron's
Minneapolis.
pinching the bridge of his nose. We've broken him.
So, dear listener, I think we all liked this movie. Like 7 out of 10. It's enjoyable. It's not the best movie ever, but it's worth watching.
I feel like it holds up well.
Yeah.
It's classic.
Does it feel dated at all? I mean,
It's a period piece.
We noticed it was 1992. Pretty quickly.
Well, is it a period piece? Because it takes place at
Well,
time
okay,
with the
so
framing
the
devices.
very
Dottie
beginning and the very
remembering.
end.
There's a framing
Current
device that
Yeah.
looks very 1992.
Yeah.
It looks like they are. It looks like places my friends lived in when I grew
Yeah,
up.
the framing story at the very beginning and the
And
very
the
end.
end.
And then we get, this
Are-
middle.
Are very much of the era that the film was made in.
Right.
But then when they go to the 1940s, it actually feels a little more authentic and out of,
Not as dated, not as
Not
timed.
It
as
looks
dated.
it looks cleaner.
it
and-
looks
and crisp.
classic.
Yeah,
Classical.
get in that
Yeah.
Model T to drive from the East Coast all the way back to Oregon.
I looked at the trivia for that. They wouldn't have made it.
Yeah.
The sticker on their car indicated the gas they needed was being rationed for the.
Oh yeah.
So they wouldn't have made it from where they were to Oregon.
So that's
the
why
goose.
Gina Davis came back.
Yeah.
We also said that the train,
didn't look like it's from
Yeah,
the
it actually looked like an
40s.
Amtrak from the 80s.
Well, I was going to say like 1960s. Like Oscar Peterson had this great jazz album of the Night Train, and that's like 1963. It looks like one of those trains,
Yeah.
not like something you see in the 40s.
I mean, it's probably authentic, but we're sitting here. We have no.
So I'm
no
going to
idea.
pitch the idea I told Brian. We're going to mix this with Back to the Future and make $1 million.
There you
All right,
go.
hold on. Dear Google, what did trains look like in the 1940s?
Probably better than what we think they did, because a lot of people use train travel versus driving because not everybody had a car.
So I just realized you guys saying going to the memory, it looked more classic. That has to be an editorial, a directorial, a cinematography choice
And
for Dottie.
intentional thing.
Yeah, for Dottie to be
Yeah.
remembering like, oh, the good old days.
Very
Like
much
just
so.
it being it being more clean
Well,
and crisp.
Okay, the framing device, it almost looked gauzy and like
Right? Like a soap opera.
like a soap opera, and it was much cleaner and clearer when they went back to the 40s.
1940s train. Sorry, listener, you'll bear with us.
Dan, put this on the blue sky. Send it to Dan.
Yeah, so we're
on Blue Sky now.
We pulled up a
we are?
picture of what like a typical
Yeah, dude.
East
Art-
Coast to
we're
West
cutting
Coast and
edge.
West Coast.
A 1940s
East
Art
Coast.
Deco bullet train.
It looks cool.
It
It looks like something from Bioshock.
Bioshock, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it
very
does.
chrome.
Steampunk.
Very,
I'm sorry,
very
Brian. Before I
chrome.
completely derailed our podcast.
Holy
Aaron,
shit.
You were saying something
Fucking-
intelligent, and then I.
Yeah, so-
Hey, Aaron, hit me with another movie.
So when it goes back to the 1940s, it's much more clear.
Yeah.
Almost if that's the highlight of these people's lives.
Right.
That was where their lives were extraordinary as opposed to kind of the ordinary life, which is just fine.
Right.
That most people live.
Pass keeps getting clearer every day.
Well,
Yeah, sure.
and somebody had said, I think it was the son of one of the original Rockford Peaches, and
Oh,
said like it
geez,
was like the best
the one who
trip
cried,
she'd
yeah.
ever taken. Like she'd said that through the rest of her life.
Well, her opening was talking to Jimmy, saying, "Hey, so my husband's reading the one ads, and he doesn't want to deal with my kid. And is it okay if a kid comes with it?" And he's just drunk, staring at her like, "What? is
Bring your
happening?"
child? Why would you do that?
And then the kid is just a little
Because it's
menace.
baseball, and there's no crying in baseball.
We don't have
There's-
employer child care credits now in 2025. Like unless you're in Sweden, like no, this is still kind of a problem. I think for especially working single moms, but any working parent.
So soundtrack. There was a jazz scene and a club, dancing, music
Yeah,
was
I mean,
being played. But
it was-
prior to that, there was just a
Hans
lot
Zimmer
of,
did the score, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes.
And all felt appropriately uplifting baseball music.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed the score a couple places, but like I like in a movie, I didn't really pay attention to it, and I don't have a lot of comments on it. 'Cause
I didn't notice.
I
the
didn't
score.
notice it a lot.
Wow.
which is a good sign. It means it accentuated or helped reinforce what was being shown on the
Yeah.
screen.
I
Versus
noticed it a
distracting.
few times, only because I love a montage. I genuinely love a montage. Listeners at
Yeah,
home,
it,
a little bit
and
of
it's
trivia.
shown during the montage. It was very well done for the montages.
A little bit of trivia for the group here. These guys are all in my we're all in the same D&D group. In my first homebrew thing, I thought, "Ooh, montages are a great way to like speed up travel." And it's a great storytelling device. I love a montage. You guys had some great moments in this movie. I think used the montage and the music appropriately. Like it all worked. It all synced up really well.
Trey Parker and Matt Stone would like a word with you.
I
Montage.
need a montage. I mean, that might be the only song we can sing on this podcast.
Hey Blake,
and not blink it.
is Gremlins a sports movie?
Yeah, I think they play baseball at some point. I feel like he uses a baseball bat.
All right. Was there
And
was
there's
there
also
beer?
the sport of exploding a gremlin in a microwave. Anyway,
That's not a sport. All right. Was there beer? Was there beer?
was Beer Fest a sport movie?
That it's the sport of
The sport of
competitive drinking.
competitive drinking.
Competitive binge drinking.
And,
Yeah.
and there
And
was
that's a good segue.
and there was some really
To what?
really interesting
Oh, no.
mugs of beer consumed in the dance hall scene that they
Yes.
went to. There were so you want to sit here and think, okay, so these poor ladies, most of them single, a few of them are married. The married ones probably didn't go to the club. They're all there. They want to have a good time. And there's all these military guys, which I'm like, you're in the middle of the country. What are these guys doing in uniform?
I
basic
heard that
training.
thought too.
That was kind of one of the
That
Training.
makes sense.
Yeah, I assumed
Maybe they're on leave.
on leave or something. I don't know.
While
It just
fighting
seemed
Hitler?
weird.
I think not, sir.
It seemed like it was a very,
no
very.
Most units were in combat for like 90 to 120 days
Right,
before
right,
they
right.
got rotated back.
Most of the guys were in uniform, and a few that weren't were obviously over 21 because they were in the club. And you're just like, why didn't you get deployed? Why didn't you get blah 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 blah? So it seemed weird to me that there
Stolen
was
valor.
that many people inside the club. I mean, it was a good jazz scene, and they were dancing and having a good time.
Well, and
singing,
especially in wherever Illinois or
Rockford,
Wisconsin.
Illinois, sir.
but
You're in
Rockford,
calm
Well-
down. You're yelling.
You might see more uniforms in New York or Los Angeles points of call where they're
It just seemed it
in the
just seemed a
middle of
little
country.
interesting.
No,
Yeah, I don't know. I think that that would be if I had any criticism, that scene, and then also when they show the fans,
a lot of soldiers in
a
uniform.
lot of soldiers in uniform, and then a lot of older people and a lot of really young kids.
Those soldiers in uniform could be recruitment sergeants. You know,
I don't know.
they could be in training. They could be logistics officers. They could be payroll.
They could
Like-
be guarding the German
That's a good
POWs that are farming.
That's
Yeah.
right.
They could be Hogan's Heroes.
Yes.
Right.
So they did have beer consumption during
Prison
the
movies have
film.
montages.
Yes,
They do. And they're sports movies. The sport of escaping prison. That's what makes
being-
Shawshank
or-
Redemption a
or-
sports movie.
All right,
Or
let's talk
being
about
in
beer.
prison. Yeah. All right. So we've been talking
I'm not going to
about
lose this game.
we've been talking about A League of Their Own, which is an interesting movie that came out back in 1992, long time ago.
The
It's
height of
been
civilization.
30-something years ago. Wow.
And
it
Furbies
seems
all
like a
over the
really
place.
If we believe the Matrix, it was the height of human civilization.
Yes.
Furbies everywhere. People had cassette tapes. Smoking? Question mark.
Yeah, you could smoke
still
in
I was
smoking.
8 years old then. I don't know what was happening.
So, because of the timing of this episode, I decided to, we mentioned earlier about She Brew, which is a women in brewing or female in brewing event that occurs here in the Portland metro area. I'm part of the Oregon Brew Crew, which is a homebrew club, which are one of the primary sponsors of putting on the event. And every year it grows and it sells out. They have tickets and stuff. And I decided, because I knew we were going to watch this film and I really wanted to, and there are a number of breweries in the Portland metro area that have female or women brewers as the head brewers. I decided to go to two of them that weren't far from each other, one of them being Grand Fir Brewing and the other is Steeplejack Brewing. We have had a Steeplejack beer before.
Mm-hmm.
But this one we have not had for the podcast. It's a very interesting one that we started out with.
The alt beer.
It
According
is
to
an
the top,
alt
it's a
beer.
mighty fine beer.
And there's a bunch of marketing copy. Do you want me to read it or do you want to?
No, this is, the light's good. The print is good. So this well-balanced malty treat is our take on the classic Dusseldorf style featuring Northwest craft. Oh, I lost
Malt.
my spot. I lost my spot. Oh,
Craft
craft
malt.
malt with soft notes of caramel and toffee that give way to a clean, noble hop profile.
Yeah. So 4.1%.
We're going to give the reading a 9.1. This is a sport.
I'm never going to do that professionally. I'll lose my spot.
Yeah. So Steeplejack Brewing has 3 locations in town. They had opened up originally at an old Methodist church. That's an amazing down in Sullivan.
If you can get down there, it's such a gorgeous space. It's incredible.
They have full bar. They have a restaurant. They have their beer. They have beer engines. You can get both cask draft as well as nitro drafts. Some of their beers, including the one that we tried, which is their alt beer, which is a Dusseldorfer style. It is not an alt beer because it's not made in Dusseldorf. The same thing you can say about Kolsch. If it's not made in Cologne, it's not a Kolsch.
And the same
It's
with
Kolsch
champagne.
style.
It has to come from
Yes.
that region.
Otherwise,
Oh,
it's
interesting.
just sparkling disappointment.
Oh, jeez.
Got him.
So
And that's a sport.
this was a really light, clean,
Real quick,
a
Dan.
little sweet.
It says Steeple Snacks. Are they doing a series of like small serving beers?
Yes.
That's so cool.
So not only is it low alcohol, but this is a dinky small little can. It's 7.5 fluid ounces. So it is not even like 10. I mean, you could literally just like drink this in one gulp if you were really thirsty.
If you're Dan.
If you're me.
And Blake, I knocked it out real fast.
Yeah.
Oh,
Or,
I took-
Rosie O'Donnell.
I took my time with it. It was good.
Good for you, man.
It felt kind of like the flavors were all good and on point, but it felt like just the viscosity was a little bit thinner than what I would want in a beer, and also the flavors were a little more subtle.
Yeah.
And like it was I'm not calling it like watery in any respect, but I was expecting and kind of hoping for something that had a little more intensity to it.
So alt style beers range from 4 to 6%. So they can be thicker and more viscous.
Mhm.
This one is on the lower end of ABV. And again,
More like Viscaless, am I right?
yeah.
No, I mean I drink it again. I'd be happy to drink.
Yeah,
it again.
exactly.
I just imagined.
You were expecting something more.
So I'm going to give a
Heavier.
shout out.
Mhm, that's fair. That's fair.
I have had the opportunity to do a brewery tour and chat with Anna Buxton, who is the head brewer there. She helped open the business. Her history is that she started at Uptown Market here in Beaverton more than a decade ago, or about a decade ago. And then she went to Long Beach, California to be one of the brewers at Rock Bottom Brewing,
LBC.
location there.
Nice.
And then she came back to Portland when Modern Times opened up their facility where Commons Brewing used to be. And then she moved over to Steeplejack. She does really amazing British style beers. She has
British style?
my favorite is called Alewife, and you can get it on cask. And it is just a standard British bitter and super clean, a little thin, and it's served at proper temp. It's not
So
it's
kind of warm-ish.
kind of warmish to people in America. Be like, that beer's like warm, and it's like, no,
My
it's actually
keystone
cellar
light's
temp.
real cold, man. Why is it so
Yeah.
warm?
Was that like
Exactly.
55 degrees, like
Yeah.
cellar temp?
Yeah.
That guy.
Nice.
Between
yeah,
55 and 60 is
You got
cellar. You know what it is. And they do have a beer engine they pull it off of, and it is, I don't know if they're doing metal kegs or wooden kegs.
Real
but
quick, Dan.
What is a beer engine?
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Aaron. I was just about to ask. Brian was also going to ask, but we both cut him off.
No, I wasn't.
I'm faster. I'm faster. Beer engine faster.
As mentioned before on a previous episode, so a beer engine is a device that allows you to pull the beer through a tube using suction.
Oh, versus like standard carbonation?
Correct.
Stuff?
It is
Okay.
a non-carbonated. It is not force carbonated in the keg.
Oh, cool.
You're hooking it
It's
up.
a pull.
It's a pull. The beer engine, that's why you see them pull the lever down and the beer comes out. And it's usually a little foamy. You let it sit for a minute or 5. You let the foam settle, then do another pull. Guinness is, if you've ever seen Guinness commercials, that's how Guinness is traditionally served, is on a beer engine.
Or the YouTube short with Conan O'Brien going to the Guinness factory and complaining that he hasn't had a drink the entire day, and it's a really fun bit. Brian, you were right about the whole pull system.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Before we recorded.
Basically, a beer engine is similar to a fire engine.
Brian knew
you
all
hook up-
along.
You hook up the hose and you
They're-
pull it through.
They're both red.
And they're both red. No, not always.
And it takes a professional to operate it, really.
It
And there's
does.
Dalmatians everywhere.
All right. And so
Sorry,
interesting,
Dan.
good, soft beer. If you don't like super sweet, if you don't want something that's a hop offensive, this is a good starter beer for some people.
It was a surprisingly easy beer to drink. I saw it. I feel like I have in my brain that alt beers are more like intense or strange.
Yeah, I guess.
And I just, but this one I knocked
they're
out so
sweeter.
fast. I was like, I'm just going to put this
Generally
down and drink my
sweeter
water.
beers.
They
Right.
tend to be a little sweeter, yeah.
You know, if I'm having a bad day at work and I want just like a little something unofficially, this is the beer I would choose. Like, you
A
know,
little steeple snack.
a little steeple snack, because like, you know, take the edge off, but not have anything that's too much or anything where my boss would be able to tell that I had a beer. And you know, like this is perfect for that
would
kind of
never
situation.
happen. That would never happen. You work remote.
Let's not dox me. Then they're going to know.
I know. So,
Who's they?
all right. Any other thoughts on this?
beer spies.
For those, is this the first time you've had an alt beer, Brian?
No, you know, I was an exchange student in Germany.
I know.
I had a lot of alt beers.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I learned something new. Did they have a women's baseball league in Germany?
Not that I was aware of. I wasn't there long enough to completely assimilate.
So you
So-
weren't screaming at some poor woman saying there's no crying in baseball?
There's no crying in baseball.
No.
There's no crying in soccer.
There's lots of crying in soccer. It's all the flopping.
It's no crying in the Bundesliga.
Bundesliga, yes.
Yes.
There's no crying in beer fest because you're too drunk to cry.
Correct. Your thoughts, though? I mean, so as
I'm
a
curious.
non-hophead at the table, good, sessionable, not offensive, not terribly.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a small can.
I
mean, it is
really enjoyed this one. I actually thought the second beer I enjoyed a little more.
Yeah, I think we'd all say that.
And I think we'd all say that. I would say, from my memory, this is a pretty good example of an alt.
Yeah.
I don't know if it doesn't not go with the film, but it also doesn't really go with the film.
Thank you for bringing
Right.
that up. I was going to say, I don't think it matches the movie. It's good, and the movie's good, but I feel like this would match more of a sci-fi vibe, maybe murder mystery, like something with a little more stuff happening.
Something with a tropical location where there's lots of
Yeah.
hot weather.
I
Intensity.
think like
Yeah, I
a
can
James
see that. I
Bond,
can see
like a
that.
spy thriller,
Yeah.
might work really well
Ooh,
with
that's
this.
a good call. That's
Or
a good
maybe
call.
Train to Busan. I would drink that with Train to
I would
Busan.
drink. I would drink several of these to Snowpiercer.
Yeah.
Dark, heavy, weird movie.
Weirdness. All right. So, any Aaron, you have any final thoughts on this one before we move on to the second?
I enjoyed it. I think maybe it's part of my education as a beer drinker to realize like an alt beer is not like an alt goth girl. You know, like it's not going to be that intense.
It shouldn't be. It can be, but
And
it
it's-
shouldn't.
you
be.
can't find it in Hot Topic.
I've got one last question. So you said this is a Dusseldorfer alt beer.
Yes.
Yeah.
What makes that distinction?
It is a Dusseldorfer style alt beer. So again, if it's not made there in Germany in Dusseldorf where the alt style originated, you can't call it an alt beer.
Okay.
It is a style of that beer. You are
Okay.
paying homage to the beer style.
Okay.
And alt
cool.
beers actually, as a classification of beers, it's a subclassification. So it is a style that exists. It's just Not many people can pull it off in America because they don't have exposure or they don't know the
Probably
water
not
profile
the
properly.
same
and they don't-
hops, right?
You can get stuff imported. And there's a few places. This is a good example. This is not offensive. It's really clean to drink.
Yeah.
And I
Easy
appreciate
drinking.
what they're doing with it.
So in the wine world, there's all this, control and like lineage of the, like going back to a DOC of like, where was this wine grown and where is it from? Like the geography of the wine.
Right.
And that's given a lot of importance, for some types of wine more than others. But I wonder, I don't really think of beers as being approached in the same way. Like,
They're not,
a beer that's brewed in San Francisco is not necessarily going to have a different character than a beer brewed in Denver necessarily. But now that I've said that, as this Dusseldorfer example, and then also like Anchor Steam from back in the day with that very much was of a place. And so I kind of wonder, maybe, do you think that we'll see more of this type of I want to use the word like data lineage, but beer lineage?
Hyper-local?
Well, kind of just keeping track of like locality and geography.
I don't know. That seems like something that is part of the beer culture and professional brewing. They try to, when they try to stand out or they try to represent something, they want to do it not always as close as they can to the original style. They want to differentiate themselves because
Creativity.
If you're making it the same as everybody else, then what's the point? If you go to Dusseldorf or you go to Cologne or you go to anywhere where those beers in Germany are made, you're going to find that every single brewery makes it a little differently. They're using a slightly different hop variation, slightly different malt variation. It all uses the same kind of components, like cake. I mean, you can get cake anywhere in the world,
and we do,
but it's going to taste way different. And I think that's the best way of me describing it. It's like the analogy is like it's a food substance. It's going to be different based on the region and what they've done and where they get their ingredients.
And the baker.
And the baker and what they want to do with it.
Good call. Yeah.
But I also think too, like the beer will have grown up in that area with the foods that are there too.
Correct.
Like it'll complement the cuisine in a way.
It usually does, yeah. Yeah.
I like that.
Moving on to the second beer, we had a Bohemian / Keller style Pilsner from Grand Fir called Trail Bloom. And so Grand Fir Brewing is on like 14th and Stark-ish, around there. This is a 5.5 ABV, 15 IBU, kind of crackery, sweet, floral, grassy.
That feels
thing.
right. I definitely got crackery.
Very round.
Crackery notes.
This had no sharp notes at all. It was super round. And there is some copy on the can.
There is. There's tasting notes, and that's more extensive than the marketing copy, but I'll do both. Bohemian Style Pilsner, Sweetgrass Floral Light Biscuit. Find your coast.
There you go.
This was a really pleasant
pointing to
beer.
the west.
Yeah.
This was a really pleasant beer. I liked this one quite a bit.
I think this matched up with the movie exactly right. It tastes like the kind of beer you'd have at a baseball game, live with a hot dog in one hand. Your friend's got some popcorn.
It feels like a summer beer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very much so. So Whitney Burnside opened with her husband, I believe it was her husband, Grand Fir Brewing a few years ago. She started out, she's actually one of the OG female brewers in Portland. She started out at Laurelwood as a volunteer, for free.
Holy cow!
And then worked her way up to being like an assistant brewer and a brewer.
That's so cool.
And then she went over to Upright Brewing for a period of time, and then Elysian up in Seattle when she started doing kind of corporate level stuff. She was the head brewer down in Pelican Brewing for a period of time down at Pacific City.
She's really the Dottie of the brewing world.
She is. And then she ended up coming back to open the Pearl District 10 Barrel Brewing location and being the innovation brewer there, where she did the local stuff. So at places like 10 Barrel, where they have locations in numerous cities, they try to have a local production that you're only going to get there. They're not going to can or bottle it. It's just on draft at that location. And so she was really pushing that. And then presented with the opportunity to open up Grand Fir. I mean, and she's won a lot of awards for the wonderful beers that she's made. I do believe that this was Oregon Best of Craft Beer silver medal winner.
This particular beer?
That specific one. And they just had something at the World Beer Cup. I think another beer of hers scored really high. And it's amazing that these people have this skill set and are like rock stars and celebrities. If you know who they are and you happen to see them at the brewery, you just go up and talk to them.
It's very much like if I'm with a friend who's really into like metal bands and they see the lead singer of a metal band walk into the coffee shop and they're like, oh my God, that's so-and-so. I'm like, I don't know who that is. I'm glad you're excited. I don't have any reference to that.
Yeah. And the food that they do there at the brewery is really interesting, kind of high end. They have a great selection and it's continually growing and changing. They do seasonal beers as well as some core beers.
Love a seasonal beer.
They're not terribly farly distributed. So if you want to find them in Portland, you might get them at like New Seasons maybe, but you might find them at John's Marketplace periodically, but they sell out because it's a smaller production. They're not doing a lot of large production stuff, but they do tours and stuff at the brewery. If you go visit them in person, they're really amazing people that work there. Everyone is super knowledgeable, and I've only had really good experiences. And I asked them what beer were they going to be submitting to She Brew, and they said this Pilsner most likely.
Well, if I go and get to vote, I don't think I get to vote. But if I got to vote, this would get one of my little check marks. This is I thought it was really tasty. This is right up my alley of beers I like. I love a light beer. It tastes like a beer.
Yeah.
And again, I think it matched the movie incredibly well. I could see this being in the time frame notwithstanding, in the mugs of all those soldiers and ladies of the baseball league in that bar dancing to jazz music.
Yeah. This would be great. But yeah, if you're out at a ball game somewhere,
this would be great.
Or soccer, because Aaron loves soccer.
I would drink this for a soccer game and a football match.
I would drink this for a basketball game. I'd watch a golden retriever play basketball and drink this.
Yes. So as far as other Pilsners we've had on this podcast numerous times. I mean, we've had.
I think last episode we did. What was that Pils we did? With the camper on the can.
Who's that Pilsner?
Yeah.
Who's that Pilsner?
They range. There's a huge range in style and approaches to Pilsner beer in general, because it could be German, it could be a Czech Pilsner, it could be a French Pilsner.
Is there a space for American Pilsner? Is there like a set American Pilsner?
Yeah, there is American style lager or light lagers that is an American Pilsner. They're typically called adjunct lagers because they typically use corn or and yes, we had a dark lager last episode, and that was made with corn, I believe. And they can do that. I mean, it's still classified as a Pilsner because even within that range, dark, medium, light, there's amber Pilsners. The Czech style Pilsners you tend to find on what's called a Luger pour or a side pour. So if you see a tap handle that looks weird and has like it's sticking out instead of up, that's a side pour. And they usually serve those with more head than not because it allows you to sip the beer slowly and enjoy the aromatics. You can get beers done usually a lot of head, little head, and then or medium, and then a little bit of head. So if you do go to places like Cohesion Brewing in Denver or a few places here in the Portland area that have Luger pours, and if you ask them, they will serve it to you however you want it.
You can also give yourself a foam mustache.
You could, because foam is good. Foam is good because you get to smell the aromatics.
It aerates. And then you get more of that.
Yes.
And actually, when you drink, too, a lot of what you taste is really your nose doing the work. You smell a lot of the food.
That's why I always snort my beer with a straw and then drink some.
Right.
That's why I'm sick all the time.
Yes. I think everybody really enjoyed the second one more than the first one as far as it relating to the movie. I think as a summer.
Brian, was this up your alley? This beer?
Yeah, I enjoyed this beer. Yeah. I mean, I would say this was actually a little less hoppy than a lot of Pilsners I've had.
Yep.
That's fair. It was
and it was light and smooth and easy drinking and
right on.
Matched the film well.
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
And I would say if you haven't seen this film or if it's been a long time or if you have kids,
if you've only seen the Amazon show, was it a Prime show?
Yes,
they did a miniseries. If you've only seen that, this movie's also really good.
Yeah. I would highly recommend it. Check it out. All the actors and actresses, everyone involved in this film did a really amazing job. And they had purpose behind it. It wasn't just to make a movie. It was they're telling a great story. It's historical and it has a lot of meaning. So, any other thoughts on the movie or the beer?
Hey Blake, is Spaceballs a sports movie?
Yeah, fighting with the laser swords and using the shorts is a sport.
Is The Great Escape a sports movie?
I've never seen The Great Escape, but I imagine escaping is a sport when you have to escape from not making points.
Is The French Connection a sports movie?
The French love sports. Yes, it's a French movie. It's also a sports movie.
Everything can be a sports movie.
I'm a level 5 improv dog. I'm unstoppable.
As always, the opinions expressed during the taping of this recording are those of the hosts. Thank you all for hanging out.
And if you don't hydrate, you're going to dehydrate. I'm trying not to yell too much, but I'm trying to do a Tom Hanks thing there.
Yeah, and he did yell at a few people.
He yelled most of the movie when he wasn't washing his face off with a water fountain.
This is one of the most unsympathetic characters I think I've seen Tom Hanks play.
It's according to IMDb, at the time the trivia was put in, this is one of his favorite roles. Like, this is his favorite role he did because
he got to be an angry drunk.
Exactly. Yeah. He's always either surviving on an island or being a toy
or a soldier.
Or just being a soldier. He just generally plays nice guys. He seems like a really wonderful human being.
Or he's running Forrest Run.
He's running very fast and being let down by Jenny.
Yeah.
Mama always says stupid is as stupid does.
He plays Aaron every episode, and Dan always cuts it out. He's also Walt Disney. That's the podcast, guys.
Yes. So thanks for listening and hanging out, everybody.
All right, thanks for joining us. Until next time, don't swing at the high, fast inside balls. Just let those go.
But Aaron, I like the high ones.
Just let those go, and you'll get a better.
Just leave those balls alone.
This is Aaron. Thanks for listening.
This was a female empowerment movie.
I don't endorse that joke. This is Blake.